Good evening. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Clearlake City Council and Redevelopment Successor Agency to order. We are at Clearlake City Hall Council Chambers at 14050 Olympic Drive in Clearlake, California, 95422. Today is Thursday, October 13th, 2016. It is 6 p.m. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Councilmember Bennett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sabatier.
Here.
Mayor Purdock.
Here.
And Councilmember Overton is absent.
Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Pastor Wanda Selly, also one of our chaplains for the police department, up. She will lead us in the invocation.
Let us join together with the Holy Spirit. O great and gracious Holy Spirit, we thank you for being here with us tonight, for sitting among us, and for traveling through our hearts and minds. Please be with all the city council members and guide them with your wisdom and love as they serve this city. Bless all the people who are city employees. And thank you for keeping our law enforcement family safe from harm as they watch over us. Also, we ask that you be with all the citizens, that they may feel free to support their community and to be a part of this wonderful organization. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Mr. Folsom, any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Very well, then I'll move on to presentations.
Before you do that, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to report that there's no reportable action taken in closed session.
Thank you. Did I miss that? I didn't know. Okay. This evening I have a couple of proclamations to read. I'd like to come down and do that from the podium. And then, Madam Clerk, you can make your notice of a trick-or-treat party. A couple of important things happen in the month of October. One is we want to recognize all those families and all the victims that have suffered through domestic violence in their homes. I'm very happy to introduce Andy Peterson, member of the Lake Family Resource Center Board of Directors, because they serve our community well and helping victims of domestic violence find safety and support. It's just an outstanding organization, and we're very proud to have you with us. Thank you very much for being here. Before I read the proclamation, is there anything you'd like to say? I can step out of the way so they can hear you in TV land.
I'll simply say that on behalf of Lake Family Resources, I really appreciate the City of Clearlake joining us and recognizing this month in the campaign against domestic violence.
Thank you. Thank you. We all need to work hard to break that cycle. And it is something that we can fix as a community, and we need to work in the roots of the family, I think, to really do that, but it can be done. Appreciate all the folks that are wearing purple in support of Domestic Violence Month and supporting the purple ribbon. So if you see those out, that is what the insignia represents. So, without further ado, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 2016. Whereas domestic violence impacts women, children, and men of all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds. And whereas emotional and physical scars resulting from domestic violence are often severe and long-lasting. And whereas in the fiscal year ending in June June 30, 2016, the Lake County law enforcement responded to over 359 incidents of domestic violence, including men, women, and children. In the past 12 months, the Victim Witness Division of the Lake County District Attorney's Office has served over 280 victims of domestic violence. And the District Attorney's Office reports has prosecuted 72 felonies, 70 misdemeanor acts of domestic violence. The Lake Family Resource Center has responded to 391 crisis line calls, served victims, and additionally sheltered 149 domestic violence victims and their children for a total of 9,277 bed nights. Whereas it is crucially important to hold the perpetrators responsible for the assault and to prevent domestic violence in every opportunity, and whereas the family violence is a community problem, stopping the cycle requires not only the strength and courage of survivors, but also the support and involvement of all members of the community. And whereas many organizations such as the District Attorney's Office, Sheriff's Office, Lakeport Police Department, Clearlake Police Department, and Lake Family Resource Center are committed to ending domestic violence in Lake County and provide essential crisis intervention and prevention services to all the members of our community. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the month of October 2016 is designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the city of Clearlake. And our community is urged to support the efforts of the agencies assisting victims of domestic violence and to increase their involvement in the efforts to prevent domestic violence, thereby strengthening our community and creating an environment which honors, nurtures, and protects all members of every family. Dated this 13th day of October 2016. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Who doesn't have a pen? I'll bring those up. Am I sharing those? So hopefully when you're asked why you're wearing that purple ribbon, share with the folks that ask what it represents and what we're trying to accomplish. The next is another one that's dear to me, and that's breast cancer awareness. October is a month of breast cancer awareness, and you'll also see people wearing pink ribbons. Proud of our Lake County Fire Protection District. You'll see the volunteers and the paid staff wearing their on their uniforms a t-shirt that recognizes victims of breast cancer, patients of breast cancer, and those who have survived breast cancer. Had the privilege of walking in the Susan G. Komen 60 Mile last year in San Diego, and I'll tell you the strength of the people who have survived cancer, those who fought and sadly lost, is just overwhelming, the emotion and everything that is poured out. But there are good things happening, and there's research that's coming about because of the funds that are raised through these efforts, and someday I'm pretty sure we'll be breast cancer free. Also, I was hoping that a group from the Lakeport area could come down and join us tonight, but they're having an active a meeting this evening, planning and doing other things on breast cancer awareness, so they weren't able to make it tonight. But Shirley shared with me, Shirley's the chairperson of that group, that in Lake County they have served over 70 women who were struggling with breast cancer, and currently right now in the city of Clearlake there are 3 fighting breast cancer, and all 3 look as though they'll be successful. So the efforts and the charge is there to try to end this horrible disease. So kudos to them. So Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October 2016. Whereas, while considerable progress has been made in the fight against breast cancer, it remains the most commonly diagnosed cancer and the second leading cause of death among women in the United States. And whereas each year is estimated that more than 220,000 women in the United States will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and more than 40,000 will die as a result of the disease. And whereas October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, an annual campaign to increase the awareness about the disease. And whereas this month we reaffirm our commitment to support breast cancer research and to educate all citizens about the risk factors, detection, and treatment. And whereas, as we display pink ribbons and wear pink clothing to raise awareness, we also support those who courageously are fighting against breast cancer and honor the lives lost to the disease. And whereas this October we recognize breast cancer survivors, those battling the disease, their families, their friends, who are tireless resources for the love and encouragement, and we applaud the efforts of the medical professionals and researchers working hard to find a cure for this deadly disease. Whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through the increased education and through regular screening. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Clearlake does hereby proclaim October 2016 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Clearlake, dated this 13th day of October 2016. And I will present this to my friend who is battling cancer today. Thank you very much.
I just want to say something. And there's new breast cancer screening that's called 3D, and not a lot of places have it, but I want you to know that St. Helena Hospital in Clearlake is one of the first to get that machine. This is the first year that it's been available, so we should be very proud that our medical community right here in Clearlake is on top of this, and we're as best as we can get to.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Ms. Swanson, you have the floor.
All right. So from 2006 to 2012, we held a trick-or-treat party at City Hall, and on Halloween, kids would come and we would hand out candy, and these are some pictures I have maybe. There we go. We would decorate the lobby area out front, and kids would come and get candy. We'd have tables set up. That's Joyce's grandson. I put this picture in so she'd see him, but she's not here tonight. He's so cute. There's
George Blandy.
And he looks shorter.
Beth took these pictures. We have the lady in pink fur there with her. That's Vicky. It's really popular, so we decided to bring it back this year. And this year we have a theme. We're going back to the 70s. The decade of platform shoes, fast cars, there's a picture of one, Farrah Fawcett, and disco balls. I may be wrong about the car. I was born in the 70s, so I'm not quite sure. So it's October 31st, Halloween, from 2 to 5 here in the lobby. This is 100% donation funded event. The committee is Julie and Adeline, Tina, Chelsea, Nikki, myself, and volunteers, Vicki and Chuck Leonard, who are super awesome. We put up flyers on Lakeshore. Our flyers are the skeletons that you saw. We're partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to get donations of candy and small toys and pencils for kids who have perhaps allergies. We're providing reflective trick-or-treat bags, which are generously funded by the police department, which are paid for by asset forfeiture funds. So, you go back. Thank you. You can find the information on the website. We also have an event on our Facebook page, and we'll take donations here at City Hall. If you'd like to donate, we're taking candy, unopened bags of candy. And we're asking everybody to come down on Halloween and have fun with us. So,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
we're all going to be dressed up as 70s, so let's go.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is public comment. Public comment is a time when you can speak on an issue not currently on our agenda for the night. You can speak up to 3 minutes on any issue that you wish. Our first request to speak tonight was submitted by Mr. Bill Shields, and he'd like to talk about the road tax. Bill?
Give me just 1 minute, Bill.
Just 1 second, Bill.
Good evening.
Just a second, Bill. Our clerk is not in her place.
Good evening. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Now, this road tax has me totally confused. First, the city was talking about private roads. Now, here they're talking about grading dirt roads. I mean, do you have any brochure on this stuff, what it's all about? I mean, even Chuck will tell you, the city said they had no jurisdiction on private roads. You know, here you're saying you're going to grade the dirt roads. Now, what roads are you talking about? Then you're saying that 100% is going into this. Now, will there be any hidden cost, like administration fee, engineering fee, attorney fees? Is any of that going to be in this? Or what's it all about?
You'll have to come talk to us. We can't have this discussion. It's not agendized.
Not going to be any administration cost,
Mr.
no
Shields?
engineering cost.
Same instruction as I gave. We can't comment because it's not an agendized item. Doing so would be a violation of the Brown Act, which is a violation of law, and I'm sure you wouldn't want us to have a violation of the law. So if you have any questions, you might ask the fellow in the purple shirt next to you. He sat on the committee that created that flyer. He may have some answers for you.
I know it's totally misleading.
Or Mr. Shields, stay after the meeting, and I will gladly help clear up any of your questions.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak at this time? Public comment? You have 3 minutes, and our clerk will reset the clock.
Jeff Leonard, City of Clearlake. Since my name was mentioned, I know the city has no intention of paving or grading any private roads. The unpaved roads that are talked about obviously are not private roads, or they wouldn't be being touched. That's a very simple situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please step forward.
Since Melissa brought up the thing about this Halloween thing down here at City Hall, I was wondering, are they still going to have that trunk or treat or trunk or whatever up there by the youth center this year? Oh, nobody knows.
The answer is it's being worked on, yes.
Yes, I believe you checked with the youth center, but again, it's not an agendized item. We can't answer specific
Well,
questions.
the thing is, Russell, It's never open, so how do you check? You just go up there and talk to the walls or what? And get no answers.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please step forward.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Wilson. I'm a resident of the city of Clearlake, and I'm here to encourage the city council to place an ad in the San Francisco Chronicle Lake County Insert, which will again be published on November 11th. Thank you.
Thank you.
The act of what?
The San Francisco Chronicle Lake County Insert.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please step forward.
I'd like to speak. Bill Harris, resident, business owner, City Clearlake. So I did notice some commentary on one of the social media sites recently about our homeless population issue at a specific strip mall. And there was a lot of really super negative commentary on there that was indicating that some of the local citizens might be taking some pretty serious aggressive action towards the homeless population because they feel like they're being accosted. So that prompted me to kind of start a little investigative work. I did make contact with the police force about what's going on down there, of course, but I also went down and I took an opportunity to walk the strip mall every other day for the last 2 weeks, and I've sat down with the homeless people. There's different people on a daily basis, so it's strange. Some are the recurring, but I keep finding new people. So I sit down with them and I find out what their plight is and how they ended up there and what things they're dealing with. And I'm trying to come up with a solution. But the one thing that I'm coming to is that the problems are probably fairly obvious, but drug addiction and mental illness are our main focuses. And then I think the largest thing that keeps them homeless is hopelessness. And I feel like that communication with them has been very effective. I've just simply been asking them not to affect the success of the business owners that are in the strip mall and to not be aggressive when they're asking for things for the general population. And in the 2-week time frame, I've built such a strong relationship with them that now we greet with handshakes and hugs. So I know that there's a lot of future progress to be made, and I'd like you guys to create a committee, and I'd like to be on the committee towards working towards the success of our homeless population living amongst us. Obviously they do already, but if we treat them more like humans, it seems to have a really, really good effect. And I think we could work towards maybe some sort of a housing issue. Obviously we're talking about that from the county perspective, but I'd like to see what we can do to move forward on that and do something before it gets real cold. So that's it. Thank you guys.
Thank you, and I will talk to you about that after the meeting.
I'm Vince Metzger, local. I want to reinforce what Phil was talking about the homeless. This is a subject I've been working on for a couple of years, and I'd like to be part of that committee. I think that we should agendize it. I think that Clearlake can be really innovative on this, since we have the problem that exists. My solutions, which I'm going to work with Phil on, because he's my candidate, I'm voting for him, and I want him to kind of vocalize this. I'm going to back him up. But I think that we really can solve this problem, because there are forces already working on it that are way ahead of what we're imagining. I mean, we have people building these miniature houses. We have RV parks that have managers, owners that are willing to lease their RV park as a homeless community. And we have, we've already estimated what it would cost to house our homeless community, and it would be less money than it costs for the police department to keep track of them. It's a very expensive process to monitor them in the community, because they're basically chaotic, in a chaotic situation. They don't really contribute to the order of society, so the police have to waste all this time and effort and resource. Actually, the main problem with the homeless is about 5 or 10% of them, which are criminal, insane, drug addicts. And those people actually need to be institutionalized. The homeless themselves are just unfortunate souls that are in a bad predicament. That most communities can design a situation to solve that problem. I'm going to work with Phil. We'll be back. But I just want to encourage the city council to agendize it and to invite the public input. There are nonprofit organizations and very active people already working on this, but they're kind of frustrated because they don't know how to draw the interest of the county and the city. And I think that you guys, as our leaders, stand the opportunity to serve as leadership examples of what to do with these situations and these problems that are actually all over the country. But if we could come up with an example, we could serve as a leader in that venue. Just want to say that and inspire you guys to make it into an issue that you put on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close public comment, move on to the consent agenda. Any changes in our consent agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Council members, any changes, anything you'd like to pull? Very well. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as is.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Now we'll move on to public hearing. And item number 7, public hearing to consider adoption of ordinance number 191-2016, approving the development agreement with Arisco Development number 19 LLC for the property located at 15885 Dam Road. Mr. Folsom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had this discussion a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, we passed it as a resolution rather than an ordinance, so we need to go through this again and hopefully pass it correctly. The property, as you mentioned, is located at 15885 Dam Road Extension. It's the former Fresh and Easy site. On this map, it's located right there, directly across from where the existing Walmart is and the Carl's Jr. down below. On September 8th, you all reviewed it in a public hearing. Unfortunately, we approved it as a resolution. As I mentioned, the Clearlake Municipal Code does require approval of a development agreement by ordinance. Just to go over the terms with you again, these are significant points of the development agreement. The term is for 18 months. The developer will pay a fee to the city of $50,000 for road improvements. No additional development impact fees will be required by the city. It will not alleviate any requirements under CEQA. And we ask for a motion to adopt the ordinance 191-2016 and authorize the approval of the development agreement with Orozco.
Thank you, Mr. Folsom. Any comment by council members at this time? I'll open this up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please step forward. Seeing none, I'll bring it back for action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to close public hearing. Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any further deliberation? And do I have an action?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to adopt ordinance 191-2016 and authorize approval of a development agreement with the Orozco Development number 19 LLC for the proposal development of property located at 15885 Dam Road Extension, APM 010-043-250.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to business.
Point of order. Aren't you supposed to have 2 readings on that?
No, not for a development agreement. You do for other ordinances that would go into the municipal code, but this is not going into our municipal code.
Thank you. Item 8, review of preliminary assessment by Aircon Energy and direction to management about the next steps. Mr. Folsom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce Chris Becknell, who's our Director of Finance.
Thank you, sir.
Forgive us while we do our dance. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council Member. Several months ago, management entered into an agreement with Aircon Energy to do a preliminary assessment of our energy usage and our equipment for energy production in the city. Aircon Energy did that. As you know, most of the facilities in the city have been around for a number of years, and in particular, especially our heating and air conditioning systems in this building and also in the community center are quite old. As a matter of fact, the units that went into the community center were used units at the time they went into the community center some 15 years ago. Our energy usage is fairly high, and I routinely have been putting about $20,000 a year into the budget in the expectation that one of the units in this building is going to go out, we're going to have to replace it. And our budget is tight, and coming up with money to replace heating and air conditioning units can be a bit of a problem if we don't budget for it ahead of time. So we retained Aircon Energy to go through and do an analysis of not only these two buildings, but also look at our other energy usage, and also spend a little time looking at the feasibility of maybe doing some solar work. So rather than go a little farther on this at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the representatives of Aircon Energy, and I have Andy Roth, who is the Director of Energy Operations, and Jeff Wagner, who is the President of Aircon Energy, and I don't know who's going to make the presentation. I'll have them come up and make a presentation about the findings that they found, and then we'll talk about what the next steps are from this point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chris. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and professional staff, thank you so much. All right.
Let me just keep, did you get the...
No, I did not get the tutorial.
That one's down, that one's down.
Okay.
We should have no problems.
Down, go forward.
Yes.
As Chris said, we were asked to come up and take a look kind of under the hood, if you will, at the city current infrastructure. And we tend to look at things both sides. We look at what we call the demand side, those things that are the lights and the heating, air conditioning, things of that nature, as well as what we call the supply side, which is what Chris was referring to on the energy itself, where it comes from. So just a real quick aspect for people that don't know us real well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Aircon Energy is out of Sacramento. We've been around since 1974. Over 4 decades with clientele, and I'll show you that real quickly, primarily for it's all public sector. We do cities, we do counties, we work with the state of California, particularly Department of Corrections, and schools, public schools, K-12 through community colleges. We are a contracting firm that specializes in energy efficiency. That's what we do. I'm not going to read through all these. It's kind of hard over 4 decades to give you a complete list of who all we've done business for, but this is kind of a nice mixture of cities and counties and whatnot. The city of Portland just approved us at council for an $800,000 efficiency project. It's phase 1 that will probably start by the end of this year. We're looking at solar for them and doing some interesting things on a phase 2. So the way we work is we come up, we look under the hood. There's no upfront cost for that. There's no upfront cost to you. What we're looking at are improvements based upon the savings that can basically pay for those improvements to you in the city. And that's what we're going to show you here in a second. So I know this is kind of hard to read, but we develop a preliminary feasibility analysis. I think all of you have a copy of that. And just real quickly, there's, I think, 11 measures on the sheet. We went around to the two primary facilities, City Hall and the police station, as well as the community center and then the parks. And we list a host of different things that the city can take a look at, depending on what they want to do. And the real key aspects is not only a preliminary estimate of what the costs are, but really most importantly is what those savings are and what we project as a feedback. So I'm going to go real quickly to the bottom. And again, this is kind of everything under the sun, but with solar, there's about $375,000 worth of improvements in HVAC and lighting that we've identified. And I have to point out, this building is an example. I think there's 9 units on it. We are not looking to give you things you don't need. Our engineers tell us that you could probably do the job here with 7. So it's not like we're looking to incrementally just replace what you have. It's putting things in a way that's going to be better for you. But all told with solar, we're looking at just under $1 million. The solar, roughly 3/4 of an acre, would probably do it. The utilities have a nice program called ResVCT, which allows you to have one location for solar arrays, which is kind of nice. You don't have to put them everywhere. And that allows you to benefit from solar. And you're in a market where you're spending quite a bit of money. You're about 23 to 24 cents a kilowatt hour on your cost from PG&E. Solar is far more attractive in terms of what it would provide you. So that's what we're recommending. The real key in looking across those numbers, first year energy savings, we're estimating to be a little over $90,000. So quick math says payback about 10 years on an investment of just under $1 million. And certainly your equipment's going to last longer than that. We then go further, we model the cash flow side, and this is kind of a busy slide. I guess the things I would point out is that all told, if you take a look at, if you finance the project, no cash out of pocket, they call it a lease payment, but it's a tax-exempt lease purchase, so it's a payment to own, if you will. For the energy efficient side, you're looking at roughly $30,000 a year, roughly, and then the solar would be roughly $40,000. The real key is your savings is going to allow you to generate positive cash flow from year one. And if you look down over the 17-year term that we took a look at for modeling purposes, that's over $600,000 of positive cash flow to the city above and beyond the cost of the improvements. Pretty substantial monies. There are a variety of different funding sources that we can take a look at. Listed a few of these. I don't think we want to go through and spend a lot of time. The utilities have programs. CEC has programs. I talked about the tax-exempt lease purchase. Then this clean renewable energy bonds, that's very attractive for solar. It has a very low borrowing cost, a little over 1%. So that's kind of where we're at. What we've done, I think, thus far is we've done our assessment. We're down to the phase really to find out from you what you'd like us to do. And I think, Chris, that's where we're really looking for the direction from here. If you wish for us to go that next step, which would be an investment grade audit, where we'd sign a letter of intent, or do you wish to go another route? So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andy. The thing about this process is the California law recognizes the ability of doing a process like this where we don't have to go out and go through an entire bidding process to retain a firm to do this. That's not to say that we can't choose to do that, but there is a provision under the government code 4217, which allows us to go through this process and contract directly with basically a design-build firm to engage in this process, so long as the savings that we obtain exceed the marginal cost of the improvements that are made. So the question that management has for council is, would you rather have us go through a letter of intent process and just continue on with Aircon Energy, or would you rather have us go through a RFQ process, request for qualification, and go out and see what other firms may also offer along this line? As I indicated in the staff report, management's opinion of this is that it is possible that you may obtain some additional savings going through the RFQ process, But I think in terms of the number and amount of projects that the city is taking on right now in terms of our public works, that the benefit we would obtain by going through that process is going to be pretty marginal compared to just proceeding directly forward on this, down this line with a letter of intent. One of the other documents that was in the staff report in terms of the section 4217 process is it does require public hearings. So it's not a situation where we're doing anything in the back room and entering into deals. This clearly is a public hearing process that has to be noticed, and there are two different public hearings that have to be had with regard to this process should we go down this road. The savings are fairly significant. I indicated over the 25-year life, it was like $1.6 million net savings. Now, with regard to the solar side of this, the advantage with this process is we were looking at where to put the solar, because what we'd basically be doing is generating our own power and selling it to PG&E and getting a credit back on our energy bills. We have the Overland Canyon property, and we have lots of sunshine here in Lake County, so that aspect of this I think is very attractive for us. And this wouldn't be a situation where we have to make substantial modifications to our buildings. A lot of this can be done on open space, out of the way, and not in the downtown area. For example, if we did it out at the community center, we would have some concerns about vandalism and things like that with regard to solar panels. Out at Overland Canyon, we can protect it a little better out there, and it's not as close to the public. So there are a lot of things to recommend to it, and we'd be happy to answer any questions from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Thank you, sir, for being here. Council members, any questions?
I have a quick question. I was looking at this earlier, and I see that there's 2 percentage rates next to the finance rate. Can you explain the 4.10% and the 1.2%, please?
Sure. There are two different programs that are reflected in that cash flow. The first one is, as I mentioned earlier, tax-exempt lease purchase, and actually that 4.1 is probably a bit conservative. We're seeing rates really more in that 3.5 plus range. The 1.2 is this clean renewable energy bond. It's basically a tax credit back, and I know tax credit, we always get a lot of questions, hey, we're a public entity, we don't pay taxes. It funds back to the IRS, believe it or not, and it does come back to the city or to any public entity for a qualifying project, so it nets out 1.2, something like that. That's why there's two different ones.
Gotcha. And what are these, like, I'm not well knowledge on this, but I do know how housing works as far as interest rates. Are these fixed rates, or are these potentially fluctuating in the near future?
They can fluctuate. In fact, that's been one of the concerns. I think all of us have been listening to the radio and whatnot, trying to figure out are they going to raise interest rates or not. It could move. The thing with Krebs is probably also something to consider. That was funded by the federal government. It was $800 million. I think the last time we looked, we're just under $400 million. Once that money runs out, we're not sure what the Fed's going to do, if they're going to restoke that or not. So that would be another consideration.
If I could, I'm Jeff Wagner with Aircon Energy. If I can elaborate on that, before you signed a contract or entered into an agreement, you would have a fixed rate, interest rate for the term of the financing. So it's not like you can get it 2 years down the road and your rate goes up. It's not floating, right?
Yeah, it's not just.
Thank you for that.
If that helps.
Yeah.
I thought that was
sorry, I missed that.
And don't sit down.
No.
Councilman Petty, you have any questions? Okay. I'm curious, what is your recommendation for location of the solar panels? Are we talking about roof installation or some other method?
I think we're not at that point where we're going to say definitively what we think, but to be honest with you, the first reaction is it would be a ground mount, which is a more cost-effective way to do the solar. So we do a ground mount where we have some open space, and we probably do what they call a tilt system, which means the arrays will move with the sun.
Thank you. Any other questions? Very good, thank you, gentlemen. Any questions from public? I'll open up public comment at this time.
Cheryl Lawman, resident of Clearlake. I have a couple of questions on just how we have chosen this particular group. Was it a recommendation from other cities, utility? How did you get there? And then also on a family commercial property, you also get solar collection, whether it's sunny or cloudy. So I want you to know that that is definitely a cost-effective way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Becknell, could you address how they were selected?
The initial contact came from Aircom.
Okay.
After Andy contacted me, I sent him away and did some checking. It never told him that, but I did some checking, and they're a highly reputable firm. So that's how they were chosen. And I don't remember what the second part of it.
That was just a comment over sun and shade.
Oh, and I'm not sure about the answer to that question. Okay.
Yes, it works.
Is the city going to invest in this money-wise?
Well, the expectation would be that the city would enter into an agreement and the cost of it would be financed by the savings through energy, the reduced energy that the city would use because we're using solar power and more efficient heating, ventilating, and lighting equipment in the city. A lot of our equipment is very old and outdated and inefficient by today's standards.
So what kind of money are you talking about the city's going to invest in that?
Well, the total cost of the project would be about $1 million, and that would be financed over, I think it was 17 years.
$1 million?
Correct. Well, and most of that is the solar array.
What kind of return are they going to get on this $1 million?
Just in the presentation that they just provided.
Yeah, the net
1.6
after-tax cash flow, excuse me, forgot from the business side. So after the net savings would be about $1.6 million. Net savings after all costs are paid.
I believe that's a positive. Anyone else wishing to make a comment?
So I think this is a wonderful step in the right direction. This is exactly the kind of thing we need to be looking at for clean, green energy. Aircom has an excellent reputation in our industry. And one thing that I would like to bring up is that if we're looking for the appropriate locations for the solar array, I know it's more expensive, but a consideration might be given to shaded parking in some locations. And also if the idea of incorporating a charging station for electric vehicles. Thank you.
First, I agree with Phil. Covered parking, it's a double whammy. But what I wanted to bring up is I've worked with innovative industries before, where they're halfway before they get to perfection. And I was wondering if this company would do something similar to a PEG broadcasting industrial provider that would provide equipment and everything like that for PEG stations. I tried to get one here, but it didn't work out. But one in the contract that they gave us, because the equipment lasts for years and the contract lasts for years, is if innovation comes along in the industry and these solar panels are suddenly replaced by inventions that create 5 times as much energy as what we have, is your company prepared to upgrade, and at what cost? In the PEG station that I worked with, they had this in their contracts, and without cost, unless it required new equipment, without cost, they guaranteed that if innovations came along, they would upgrade. And that was part of the contract. So I encourage you guys that if you make a contract, that you write into it that in a field like solar energy, which is going to make unbelievable progress in the next few years, that if you have a system that's designated to last 25 years, halfway through that contract, all that equipment is going to be obsolete, guaranteed. So just protect yourselves on that, and I would suggest you draw that into the contract, because you know it's going to change, and we might as well protect ourselves, especially if you spend $1 million. I'm all for the solar energy, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment? Very well. I'll close comment on this item and bring it back to council. Councilmember Sabatier.
When I was reading this, I did have one thing that came up in my mind as I noticed that there was the community center, city hall, police station. I didn't see anything about the youth center, and I know that our youth center, for lack of a better word, struggles to pay its energy bills, and wondering if that was something that we can also look at so we can maybe allow the youth center to provide more services to the community rather than paying for energy.
Yeah, youth center's out by one of the parks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, about the ball fields.
Yeah.
We did go out and take a look at it. We did not get access to the building that day, if I recall, Bill. If we didn't have the ability to get in there. So clearly, we can take a look at it. I think it was also an operating hours concern. How often is it run? And would that help justify any upgrades to pay for it? So we just have to look at it. Absolutely.
And I think one of the other reasons why it wasn't included in the initial analysis is that we don't pay the PG&E on that currently.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
I just want to say that solar energy is the way, not only for power, but for heating and water. I even use it down in our home outside of Guadalajara. This last year we installed it. It's cheap, it's effective, it's easy to operate, low maintenance. We have high maintenance on our aging system we have now, and we need to move to something else because it's financially going to cripple us down the line. So it's time to move into this.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I did have another question. During the terms of the potential contract, what happens if some of these solar panels break? What is are they fully guaranteed? Are they, what's the situation that we have to deal with at that point?
And maybe you could also address a question from Vince's question about updates.
Yeah, so absolutely, I agree with you. I think over time, the technology around solar is going to improve. The question is, at what point do you say, we already know solar today is a better option than buying power for PG&E at 23 cents. We're at a point now where it's a better value to make your own. So the question on that would be, how long do we wait? What does our crystal ball tell us in terms of when we should convert to solar? 10 years ago, they said, well, let's wait 10 years, and now 10 years in the future, you would never do anything. So it's very hard to say, gee, don't do solar now because it might be better in the future. We do know that the panels we would install today are currently better than what the utility can provide from an economic standpoint. The direction that the utilities go on their rates has always been up. And so we know, if we install a panel, even though it may not be the state of the art 20 years from now, it'll still be far superior to what you would be paying PG&E had you done nothing or had you waited. So, I think that waiting is probably a mistake. Once the panels are purchased, that's kind of it. we have to get our 20 years out of them so that, you know, we can get the value, and they actually will last 25 to 30 years. So, you know, we wouldn't say, okay, we just spent, you know, $400,000 on a solar array, and 10 years from now there's something that's incrementally better, let's rip it out and put a new one in. I don't think that would make a lot of economic sense, and typically wouldn't do it. We certainly would have to pay for the installation, and so we couldn't come back and install another one for free. It wouldn't last long in the industry. What was the last? What was the other?
And what happens if one of the panels breaks?
So you'll have a warranty. You know, there's you know, things that are outside of a warranty if it's vandalized or something like that. But typical, you know, failure will be covered under a warranty, and there's varying degrees of the warranty. It depends on how much risk you want to take. The panels that we were SunPower partner, which is an American-made panel and very high quality, and we can get a very long-term, 20-year plus warranty on those systems. Now, the warranties do change over time, and some of the components will not be covered for the life of the thing, but the panel itself generally is, and it can be if that's where the city wants to go.
Thank you, sir. Councilor, you've got it.
Just out of curiosity, what is the general maintenance of those panels, say over a, I don't know what period of time, but once they're installed?
The biggest maintenance issue you have with solar, any kind of solar array, is keeping the panels clean. So in a dusty environment, and you have a dusty environment, you know, they're going to become less effective if they're not cleaned on a regular basis. I would guess that you're probably going to have to clean those in this environment, and you know, we'd have to look at it, but probably, you know, maybe 2 to 4 times a year you have to get out there and clean them. And it's a simple process. It's just a water-based you know, process. But we did build that into the cash flow, an allowance for some cleaning. Maintaining the system itself, they're very, solars have become, even though it's not a simple technology, the actual panel and the installation, it's all become fairly simple. There's not a whole lot that's going to fail on those. Now you might lose inverters and wires become disconnected, that sort of thing. So you'll have to, you know, take care of that sort of thing. But with the right warranty, it shouldn't be a big out of pocket.
And when you say you have to take care of those problems, that would be your company come down and take care of that?
No, we typically would not do that. It's easier for your staff to do that. Now, if you have a warranty, if you have failures and there's a warranty issue, that would come through us and we would coordinate those solutions. But the day-to-day maintenance doesn't make sense to have us come from Sacramento to wash your panels or, you know, connect.
No, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about some other kind of failure.
Yeah, component failure under the warranty, we would
you're talking about having the panels to follow the sun and all that. If the mechanism failed in that would come under your...
Yeah, we would, yes, that would be part of the agreement for the solar portion of it. It'd be under the warranty portion. Sure. Anything outside the warranty.
Thank you. Any other comments, further deliberation? I'd just like to say that I believe it was when we were first elected, Vice Mayor, that we approached staff with this and looking for other solutions. We were having some problems with the costs associated with our community center. And unfortunately, we've just been really busy with a lot of other projects. So thank you very much for getting this to us. It is time.
Mr. Mayor,
yes, Mr.
Again, you just raised another issue that none of us mentioned. In the analysis, at the community center, all of those heating units over there are electric heating units.
Yes.
None of them are gas. So I asked Aircon to go through and do a preliminary analysis if we converted those over to propane units. And they did it, and the estimate is it would be another $6,000 a year in terms of energy savings, moving those units from electric heat over to propane heat. So, and I forgot to mention that during the presentation.
Glad you caught that. Vice Mayor.
I did see the gas portion. I was wondering what level of price was used for seeing what the savings would be, because I know that fluctuates quite a bit as well.
I remember when they plugged in, once we had 2 years ago.
Yeah.
No, but the propane that was what we sent you after we met, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't recall the email exactly what it was, but we try to take a local market rate is what it is. And I think he put an inflation factor on it. Our engineer ran it.
Because I know that I just saw the price and it's much lower than I'm used to spending right now as far as the local market. And I've seen it really high as well, so.
Yeah, well, it would still, there'd be some relativity still to that differential, right?
The savings that they did the calculation on was based on our propane costs that we incurred. So, and we do have contracts where we have a lower propane rate.
About 49 a gallon, that's the number that's in my head.
That's in this building, correct, Mr. Becknell?
Yeah, that's this building, correct.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything further, gentlemen? We have a recommendation?
I just want to talk real quick about the difference between the letter of intent and the RFQ, not RFP. I just think for the fact that this is already giving us a savings, because I prefer bidding for anything, but at this point, rather than spending more money, we're saving more money. And so I just wanted to make that public that I'm okay with going with the letter of intent in comparison to the RFQ. We're already going to save money right off the bat with the numbers that we're showing here. And we do have quite a lot on our plate for our staff to pay, not pay attention to, focus on. And so this would help us out. And to me, it's a win-win to go with the letter of intent. Typically, I would want to go to bidding, but this is not that type of situation.
I would back that up also. If staff has looked into the aircon business and the work they've done with other agencies throughout the state, unless they put up there and found that they are a reputable organization, it's something we need to go on. Like the mayor said, when he took office 2 years ago, it was on their plate at that time. Money's going down the drain now. This is just something that can immediately begin saving this city money. And in the long run, it's going to save them a considerable amount of money. So it's one of these things where we're dealing with a reputable company based on what staff has researched and presented to us. I would feel confident with that going forward without going up to bid.
I do have one last question. You said this would be open to public hearing if we go with the letter of intent. Could you describe exactly what the public hearing would entail? A similar conversation, more specifics? Because I know right now you're just looking for direction from the council. Just wondering what the difference would be with the public hearing.
So under the Government Code 4217 process, there are 2-week public notice required for public hearing for energy services contract, and for the energy services contract, and then a 2-week public notice required for public hearing for financing agreement. So there are 2 public hearings that actually have to take place. One is for the contract itself, and then the other is for the financing for the contract. Now, both of those can happen at the same time, and they typically do. Right. But those are the 2 hearings that are required.
Thank you. I think we're all on board.
I think you have your direction. Please move forward. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Wagner wants to say something.
If it's okay, I don't want to take up
one more comment.
One more comment. So I appreciate your confidence in moving towards the letter of intent stage. That's wonderful. Can I just take a second to explain the letter of intent and the way we approach that and make sure that we're all on the same page?
You seem to have some experience.
Yeah, so what we do is come up with feasibility analysis as we've done to show that there's some potential here, and then ask for your intent to move forward with an actual contract should we be coming back to you with a final proposal that reflects what we told you in this feasibility study. So what we are hoping is that we'll go into our investment grade, nail down hard pricing on everything that we showed you, get financing with hard rates, all of that, and that it'll be in line with what we identified in the preliminary proposal. And if it is, this letter of intent says your intent would be to move forward. That's our assurance that the investment we're going to make now in this final engineering stage, is worth everyone's time and effort. That's what we're asking for, the intent to move forward with the project. If for some reason we determine that you don't want to move forward, something changes drastically and the project can't be done, we would then ask you to compensate us for the time we spent in this final investment grade engineering study. And I think we identified that as $4,600. We kept the price low. But at the end of the day, that's not what we're asking. We're asking, would you intend to move forward with this project should we bring you one that reflects what we showed you so far?
And therefore, it would be at a later time that we would discuss the location.
We'd have that all nailed down before we came back to you again, before you passed your resolution.
Good.
And that's what the public hearing is for, you must have a public hearing before you pass the resolution.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Moving on to item 9, environmental review procedures. Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, I'd like to introduce Gary Price, who is our contract planner.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. A couple months ago, you might recall, we had a meeting with the Planning Commission on environmental requirements with CEQA, pardon me. I guess I'm too tall.
A bit longer, Mike.
And we talked about really in detail. This is intended to be pretty quick, but the purpose of the guidelines is to implement city higher level of specificity for city provisions to implement the California Environmental Quality, which I'll be calling CEQA. So I would ask you to refer to the various appendices in the document as we go through this to give you a little background, because most of the appendices have been geared towards the city versus the CEQA, so the forms and everything are oriented towards the city. And then I guess the big question of the day is, who's the father of CEQA? Ronald Reagan. Okay. The purpose of the guidelines is to administer and implement the Public Resources Code, which is CEQA, and implement the city's municipal code, which requires that we have guidelines to review projects. And back in June, Ryan and I gave a presentation on what what CEQA is all about, why it's important. Some big projects are coming your way, so we all need to be informed as to the importance. But I think the most important thing is that CEQA is a information mechanism for decision makers to be able to understand the implications of their decisions relative to environmental impacts. So it establishes a procedural framework for the city to make decisions on, and it requires agencies to identify and consider environmental consequences of their actions. So it applies to private development applications, public work projects, improvements. It's not intended to as a mechanism to deny a project. The procedures are to carry out CEQA based on our organizational needs and provide a higher level of specificity. It provides all forms necessary to carry out environmental review. And CEQA, I think a lot of folks have thinking that CEQA applies to everything, but it really only applies to discretionary actions. So a lot of little actions that we do on a daily basis that don't require CEQA. So discretionary action would be an action where we actually have to make a formal judgment at a public level to approve something. It does not apply to ministerial actions where there's, you're just checking to make sure things meet code requirements. Some examples are issuing a building permit, issuing dog licenses, code enforcement, things like that. There are 3 levels of review under CEQA. There's the exemption, the negative declaration, and the environmental impact report. And there's a checklist or an actual spreadsheet in one of the appendices that provides this, but one of the first things you have to do is figure out if it's discretionary, so if it's subject to CEQA, then if it's, if it's a public agent, public project, yes, then we have to determine whether it's exempt. If it's not exempt, then we have to determine the level of effect in terms of impact. There's a lot of exemptions available. There's minor alterations or replacement to existing structures, small construction or development projects, and agencies' actions to protect the environment, like we're adopting tonight. These actions would be exempt. So when is a project exempt is when do we apply an exemption is usually when we make a decision. And in our guidelines, if you refer to Appendix B, this is notice of exemption. We generally like to issue those if it's a formal action by the city. And then we file a notice of exemption with the county and sometimes with the state clearinghouse. If it's not exempt, then we have to go through a process of reviewing initial study, preparing the initial study. And there's a whole form of all the different levels of environmental review that we look at, changes to the physical aspects of the environment. Does not apply to economic or social conditions. In determining significance, the initial study has to find if the project will result in adverse impact, or if it does not, then we can do what's called a negative declaration. If there's any potential in doing the initial study that there's a potential for significant impact, then we have to do what's called an environmental impact report. So that's what, for the checklist, that's what it does. And so if you refer to Appendices C, that gives you what our checklist looks like. It's been designed for the city, but pretty much the whole document is right out of the CEQA guidelines manual. The negative declaration is a written statement by the city describing reasons why the proposed project will not result in an adverse impact, and then why it doesn't require preparation of an EIR. An environmental impact report, of course, does study the impacts of significance. It discloses to the city and the public what those environmental effects are, and sometimes we come up with, hopefully we come up with measures to mitigate those impacts to a level of non-significance. But in some cases, if they're significant, we can still approve them with an EIR versus we cannot approve them with a negative declaration or exemption if there's significance. And so there's quite a process involved, as you can see, in determining whether we issue a negative declaration or have to do an EIR. So for the negative declaration process, once we do the initial study and determine there's no significance, then we can look to Appendix F, and then we adopt the negative declaration in your decision. So generally, when you make a decision on a project, you'll want to make the environmental decision first, concur with staff. That it's not significant, then you take action to approve the project. Of course, if we're not approving the project, we decide to deny it, doesn't require any CEQA. What is mitigating negative declaration? It's basically the same thing as a regular negative declaration, except we've included mitigation measures in the project to avoid significance in impact. And so there's a statement generally that needs to be made by the applicant if it's a private development, that they agree with mitigation, they agree to make changes to the project to reduce the level of the significance of the project to less than significant. And there has to be there is no substantial evidence in the light of the whole record before the public agency that the project, as revised, may have a significant effect on the environment. So that's important, that it's really a public document. We make sure that the public understands that and they're involved in the process. And then we have what's called a mitigation monitoring program. That's Appendix K, and that's to assure that if there are mitigation measures incorporated into the negative declaration or environmental impact report, that they are complied with. And sometimes those things can take years if they're biological monitoring programs and things like that. So if we determined in the initial study that we have significance, then we have to do what's called an EIR, and that's to identify what those impacts are, and to provide opportunity for the public to evaluate that as well, and to look at options for environmental protection. And so if you look at Appendix L, it gives you the contents so that folks that are having to do an EIR with us have a better understanding of what the expectations are of the city when they have to do an EIR. The notice of preparation is something we send out when we decided an EIR is required. That's Appendix H. And what we generally do is attach the initial study. We send, if it's a big project, we send it to the clearinghouse state, and we send it out to various public agencies. If it's a fairly small project, still requires an EIR. I've not really come across one like that. Then oftentimes you don't have to do that. But generally speaking, all EIRs go to the state and have to go through a process, a 45-day process. Agencies must respond under the notice of preparation for 30 days. And it gives us an opportunity to review what the concerns are from the public and from the agencies, what their concerns are, so we can better scope the preparation of the EIR. Then the EIR is prepared, and then we file what's called a notice of completion. And that's a notice that we've prepared the environmental impact report, and now it's time for the public and everybody to give us comments on that. And then the final EIR basically we collect all the responses or all the comments and questions that folks have in the EIR, and then we respond to them during the public review period. And we have to do a good faith analysis of the comments raised on significant issues, and then we've responded. And that's what we call is a final EIR. And generally you have the draft EIR, which is the big document that you get to look at. The final EIR is basically all the comments that we received and our responses to those. And that becomes the final EIR, which is attached to the draft EIR. And so that's when you review it, we review it to make sure that the EIR has adequately addressed environmental impacts to the level that the city is satisfied. And we present it to you as a decision-making body. In many cases, if it's just a project that involves a planning commission review, like a use permit, then they would be the final decision-making body on the environmental, and they would take the action on the EIR and then approve the project or deny the project. If it goes to the council, if it's a legislative act or on appeal, then the decision would be made by the city council on the certification of the EIR. And then we have to prepare findings to support the project approval, which also includes environmental findings. In some instances, I mentioned we're going to find projects that have adverse impacts that cannot be avoided through mitigation measures. There's still, if the city chooses to approve it, even though there's recognizes adverse impacts, there can be overriding considerations to approve it, such as social and economic benefits that can go beyond the environmental impacts. And so we would be developing what's called a statement of overriding considerations. Generally, it's a separate resolution that's included with the environmental document to adopt when we certify the EIR. And so I think we talked about that. The purpose of the overriding considerations is to provide evidence for the benefits for the public record. And final action in environmental is a notice of determination. And we'd be filing a notice of determination with the county clerk's office and the state clearinghouse, whether it's a negative declaration or an EIR. There's a fish and wildlife fees the state collects, which are quite expensive. They're running between $2,000 and $3,000 for EIR or a negative declaration. And then after that's filed, there's a 30-day statute of limitation, which allows people to challenge that action in court. Now, after that 30-day expires, then there's no further action that the public or the city needs to take, and the environmental documents and decision is valid. So other aspects of the guidelines relative to how we designed this for implementation of the city is it makes the final decision-making body the environmental decision-making body. In some instances, there's other agencies that have a separate environmental branch. They make that decision, or let the planning commission make the decision for the supervisors or the city council. In this case, it's always the final decision-making body. It provides a quick turnaround timelines. So in some instances, we have a quicker turnaround time to facilitate important projects. It establishes the procedures for responsible agencies. So if the county or Caltrans is doing something that impacts the city, there's a procedure for the city to respond to that in the guidelines. It provides an appeal process for environmental determinations. The city council ultimately is the final decision-making body. And under Appendix O, we've established an AB 52 tribal consultation process so that we're reaching out to the tribes and making sure they have adequate opportunity to comment with the city as required by the Public Resource Code. And it provides a protocol for communications between the city project applicant and consultant. So there's a clear objectivity in the review process. For example, the staff or the city will be hiring a consultant separately from the project proponent. And oftentimes, a lot of cities will just allow the developer to prepare the EIR, but in this case, it's a third-party agreement. And there's actual protocols, communications between the project applicant come to staff, and the communications with the EIR consultant come to staff. So the city's always like the referee. So there's a fair process. It establishes an independent consultant selection process so that we will develop a list of consultants that seem to work for us. We've done that with our archaeologists and cultural resources, so we'll develop a list for traffic consultants, for biologists, for noise consultants, and for EIR consultants. And then we can have that out for people to select from so that we know that we have qualified folks that are working for the city. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions you have.
The reading was very long and thorough. It was definitely
short. The sequel was never short.
It's never short. It's legalese. But I did really appreciate that in the very back there was all the forms that people would have to go through to kind of let me understand better the process of what a person going through an EIR or any of the other steps that they would have to take would go through. So I really appreciate having all the appendices in there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very educational.
Thank you very much, sir.
I'm glad you were still awake.
This is really exciting. It brings me back to my planning commission days, so I appreciate the review. Anyone wishing to make comment on this, please step forward. This is one of the processes we have to go through as the city's moving forward, so that is the exciting part of this for me. Seeing no public comment, I will close that aspect. Any further action, or what would you gentlemen like to do? I would like to move forward. Vice Mayor is making his way to that.
I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2016-67, adopting the City of Clearlake environmental guidelines.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Moving on to, are we on item 9 or 10? That's what I thought. Environmental review procedures.
I believe we're on 10.
I thought we were on 10.
Don't listen.
Because that sounded pretty much like we just talked about.
Yeah.
Unless you want to hear it again.
Oh, could we? No, we better not. Let's move on to number 10. Consideration of appointments to the ad hoc committee to review and make recommendations for amendments to the dispensary ordinance and the marijuana cultivation ordinance. Mr. Folsom.
Thank you, Mayor. As I'm sure you all remember, last year we created a medical marijuana cultivation ad hoc committee that was appointed to recommend a revised cultivation ordinance for council consideration. Council adopted an ordinance based on the recommendations of the ad hoc committee, and the ad hoc committee represented a variety of viewpoints on this issue. I think everybody involved thought it was a very positive process that took into account just a variety of viewpoints on kind of all sides. With the likely passage of Proposition 64, which is the marijuana legalization, we need to review the effectiveness of our existing ordinance and potential ramifications of the new legislation. Additionally, there are several ambiguities that we've discovered in the existing dispensary ordinance that we need to get resolved. So the current mayor, members of the marijuana cultivation, I think we originally had called it the medical marijuana cultivation ad hoc committee, is Liz Bird, Vincent Metzger, Dave Hughes, Willie Cepeda, Dan Griffin, Pete Lustaloo, and Keith Ahart. There's a star next to Keith. He thinks he's a little too busy to continue to serve on this ad hoc committee, and I did not receive any conversation back from Pete whether he wanted to continue to be on the committee, but everyone else said that they did want to be a part of this committee. Vince Metzger is here tonight.
Very good. And just for those watching in, Mr. Ahart was selected as he is the managing director for Cal City Waters, and there were impacts on our water systems from some of the grows going on in that. And Mr. Lustal at the time was president of our chamber.
Right. So we would like some additional participation this time around. We would like to ask that the City Council direct the Planning Commission to appoint 2 members to the committee as well, because this will be a land use ordinance. So we'd like their participation. Staff will attend as we did before, and we will be asking the dispensary owners to be invited to attend.
Good. And of the staff members, who are you recommending?
It'll probably depend, but I believe that we're going to have our city attorney join us because there's a lot of new legislation that's involved. PD, finance, public works, code enforcement, it's going to be pretty much an all hands kind of thing because it impacts most of our departments.
Thank you, sir.
So we are asking tonight that you appoint members to the ad hoc committee and that you direct the Planning Commission to appoint 2 members as well.
Thank you, sir. And when would you propose our first meeting of the ad hoc committee should be?
Well, I'll be asking folks to get together as soon as possible.
Within the month of October?
If possible.
Okay. But I'll go ahead and proceed. The reason I was asking is we have this election coming up.
Right.
And that might have bearing on who was appointed.
Right, but we want to get going on the dispensary ordinance as well.
Understood. So with that in light, Vice Mayor, are you still available?
I would love to remain on the ad hoc committee. I think we worked well together. It was a well-rounded group, and I'd love to see it continue to discuss how we can remain in the same situation we are now, where we are able to control and change the way our city is looking.
Yeah. Since we're having our city attorney involved, it will probably coincide with council meeting dates.
Good. I'll make time for that. So it's my direction that the Vice Mayor and I will continue on. And I wait to hear from the Planning Commission to see who they appoint. as far as members of the community to replace the two that are the one that you've heard from and the other you have not, I will provide those names. I don't know if Ms. Bennett, the president of the chamber, would be available, but I'd like their input since they represent the business group. And that would replace Mr. Luslow. I believe, I can't remember the director's name for Canocti Water, Canocti Water.
Frank?
Frank, would he be available? Could you
Yeah.
check? Those would be my two replacements, because I'd like to have the feedback from those members of our community that will have some impact. Anything further, sir?
I think that'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from the public?
In reviewing the list of names up there, I see that there was a significant absence from a lot of the public issues that you have been dealing with over the last couple of months for people who have not fared well under the current ordinance, not the dispensary. I don't have any information on that. But the medical marijuana, that we probably need to be looking at citizen input as to some of the difficulties that we heard on a pattern basis that needs to be evaluated for this and how that affects the new law. So for example, the number of plants is pretty easy because it's 6 and 6. But some of the other things that I heard today, for those of us at the George's Breakfast, there are some differences between the state law and our law. And one of the things that I looked at are fences. I find that enclosing solid wood fences in our community is becoming very unfriendly. I feel like I'm driving down through tunnels rather than having open space. I have very open space in my neighborhood, and I like to keep it that way. And so I would recommend that we look more at some of the state pieces that say none of the plants can be visible from the street versus creating internal fences inside our property or along our property. That does not necessarily provide positive things. So because these folks, other than the two of you, have not sat through those meetings, I would also like to make myself available so that some of the patterns and reoccurring issues that I heard during those meetings, which I attended quite a few of them, would be brought up and evaluated in a review of that ordinance. Unfortunately, I am on vacation for a few weeks.
Well, I need some clarification. What meetings have you attended?
Where you had the marijuana abatement ordinance.
Okay, the hearings.
Yes.
Because I don't remember you being at the ad hoc. We did have the doors open for public who wanted to listen in. And the members of the public currently on there would be Mr. Metzger, Mr. Hughes, and Mr. Griffin.
But they were not here hearing the public's comments of the issues around the marijuana ordinance. So that concerns me as a public citizen.
Just to clarify, I think that she's saying that, like the appeal hearings?
Yeah, the one we had on Monday.
To name one. Anyone else wishing to comment on this topic? Please step forward. Very good. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Are these public meetings where people can come and join and listen, or are these closed door meetings?
They're basically closed door meeting. They're not agendized or anything.
Right. I just remember that in a couple of them we had the door open, so people sat in. Anyway, what's our total number of members on the ad hoc? Do you have that off? It's getting pretty big.
6, 7.
Plus 2.
Plus staff.
Plus staff and dispensary.
Right. Right. So it's getting,
and 2 council members.
try to be productive. I'm hesitant, but I would welcome any of your comments, and I assure you I'd represent that or Vice Mayor. So thank you very much for your input.
We're up to 11 at this moment in time.
That could be a little only too much. Thank you for your understanding. Very well. We're concluded. We'll move forward with that. Mr. Folsom, do you have a report?
Yes, I do, Mayor. So last week I attended the League of California Cities annual conference with the mayor and the vice mayor. I attended workshops on council relations, homelessness, Proposition 64, budgeting, and other things. I also met with several vendors with interesting products that the city might consider using in the future, so it was a very valuable meeting, I thought. Staff and I met with a consultant on the Austin Park Master Plan this week. We'd like to conduct a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council on Tuesday, November 15th at 5:30 p.m. At that meeting, we'll go over the draft plan before it's finalized, so I need to know if that meeting date works for all of you. That's Tuesday. Bruno's giving me a look here. Tuesday, November 15th, 5:30.
I'll be here.
I'll have to get back to you. That date sounds something like, I just heard that date today, so I'm not sure if that's correct or not.
Okay.
I'll have to get back to you.
Hopefully you can make that work, because it's going to be, in addition to doing that, we're also going to have a workshop on the general plan. We're hoping to have the general plan released to the public that week or the week before. So this will be kind of a time when we can kind of at least start to go through that.
Thank you so much for getting that on.
Yeah.
The visitor center, the exterior's been power washed. We, just to remind everybody, we have issued the contract for doing the exterior there. They're getting that power washed and prepped for stucco repair. I met with the contractor this week, along with Bill and Public Works. Weather permitting, the contractor hopes to complete the repairs by the end of next week, and then we'll be painting the exterior as soon as possible right after that. I want to give some commendations to the police department and code enforcement. They confiscated last night approximately 200 pounds of illegal marijuana that had been cultivated in another county and brought to Clearlake for processing. Between the police department and code enforcement so far this year, approximately 75,000 marijuana plants, illegal marijuana plants, have been eradicated. Private roads, you've heard a number of feedback about private roads this week. We know that's a concern of citizens. We're currently looking at ways that the city can improve some of the private roads if Measure B is passed without it being considered a gift of public funds. And then Election Day, just to remind the public, don't forget that Tuesday, November 8th is Election Day. City Hall will be a polling location, as well as the community center and the First Baptist Church. Voters should check their sample ballot for their polling place or call the registrar of voters for more information. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bolson. Mr. Bennett.
We did not have a PEG meeting for our local TV station last night due to lack of quorum. There was only two of us plus our station manager that showed up. Our TV station is down right now, correct? Our equipment is kaput. Had we had a quorum, we probably would have approved purchasing of equipment to get it up and running again. So our chairperson is going to probably call for a special meeting this coming week so we can have a quorum and get that up and running again. This past week, this last Saturday morning, I went to a ribbon cutting for a new business up on Lakeshore Boulevard near the St. Lena Clinic, behind where Bobby's is, that little strip mall there, for Cummins Karate and Tumbling Dojo that opened. They had quite a number of community members there and attending, and a lot of people signing up. It is Larry Cummins' son and his significant other that are opening it up, and it is really a nice looking dojo. If you get a chance, please go by and look at it. Then Saturday evening, my wife and I attended the walk through time at the community/senior center that was put on, and it was a dinner dance. And I want to tell you, it was worth every moment and every dime for the tickets. It was a presentation of the archaeological history of Anderson Marsh, put on by a local archaeologist. It was there were pomo dancers doing dances that I have not seen since I was a young man in high school, put on by the Rancheria down in Middletown. Also drummers that put on the presentation before the whole thing started that lasted probably 15 to 20 minutes, just like beginning of a powwow if you've ever been or observed one of those. It was extraordinary. And if you ever get a chance to see that video, please take advantage of it. It is history of our area here that is beyond description. And that's what I did this week.
Thank you for going to that. Appreciate it. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I saw that movie too. It's an awesome movie to represent what our heritage is over here in Lake County. It was awesome. So I also went to the League of Cities Conference down in Long Beach. Lots of interesting workshops. I'm going to kind of mimic some of the ones that Mr. Folsom already said. We talked about homelessness, crime reduction, the upcoming changes to medical and recreational marijuana that may be coming with Prop 64, succession planning, enhanced experience through augmented reality in our cities. We've had a huge presentation about the economy of California, which, according to The Economist, is really not as bad as we think it is, but housing is our major issue that we need to deal with in all of California, and I think that's a similar issue that we're going to need to be looking at strongly here soon. We also had a really inspiring presentation from a gentleman in Texas that spoke about better blocks and how he would have pop-up changes happen in the city that would offer a new vision of what could happen in your neighborhood. That was very inspiring, and I'd love to find out how we can take a portion of that presentation to make some of those things happen here. And also one that I enjoyed also was how to engage our youth into community and political participation. Very informative, very educational, very inspiring, and I'm really happy that I was chosen as a alternate member to that conference. And next meeting, I will not be here. I am also being sent to Santa Barbara for CalLAFCO meeting. Another informative and educational week for me there. And if I may make a comment based on the public comments that we received about the homelessness ad hoc committee, I know that I've discussed this with the mayor, and I'd like to have more conversations before we add another ad hoc committee, because I know we've already asked for the city to come back to us also for how we're going to deal with the cold that is coming in this winter. And so I'd like to make sure that we don't add more than we can handle at this point with another ad hoc committee, because the city might already be prepared to come back with more stuff for us. But I agree, it's something that we definitely need to do. And so I'm not going to ignore it. I'm just going to table it for this one before asking that we do that. And that's it for me.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Brady, one more comment?
I apologize. I have one more thing. Breast Cancer Awareness Fund. I have cancer survivors in my family. I just want to point out breast cancer occurs not only in women, it occurs in men. And we need to let those members of our family male members, who may be experiencing problems in their chest area, that it happens. I lost one of my detectives in the Bay Area to breast cancer. Who would have thought? And he was the most macho individual you ever could meet. So it strikes not only women, it's rare, but it strikes men also. So we need to be aware of that. So it's a great proclamation we made. Cancer is an insidious disease. It is all around us. We have no concept. Just very briefly, when I went through mine, I had radiation and chemo for 5 weeks down in, San Francisco. And I was amazed at the number of people. It was like a conveyor belt going through Mount Zion Hospital where the radiation was given from 6 in the morning till at least 6 at night was my latest appointment. 5 days a week, and it was one person after another, after another, after another. It's an insidious disease, and all of us need to be on top of it and make our family and friends aware of what the symptoms are and to go to regular checkups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bennett. I'll try to be swift and brief as I can. Lake Erie Transit and Lake APC did not meet this week. The meeting was canceled. We'll meet again next month. Also went to the California League of Cities. Thank you for your support. I know there's a lot of folks who wonder what we do with these things. Don't think that we stay at these elaborate hotels and everything, but I want to thank our clerk. We were stayed in the Travel Lodge, and it was nice accommodations, saved the city some money, and they took care of us. So we're being fiscally responsible, which is what we need to do. But the fact is we got down there, and being down there and getting to meet and other representatives of other cities, getting to talk about the problems that we're having, understanding they're having the same, is very, very beneficial. The collaboration that's done and the friendships that are made are invaluable. Things that we brought back, some of the sessions I attended was engaging and surveying the homeless, the Achilles heel to city government, which is a program on succession, and looking that we need to recognize some of the folks that are getting ready to retire and be ready for that so we can replace them. A sharing economy, dealing with the millennials and some of the things that they look at and how that's going to work in our economy as we try to go forward. Things like Uber and Lyft and VRBOs are kind of the wave of the future. People are staying less in hotels and looking more to sharing of homes. So that was very interesting. Also looking at emerging issues in police and police impacts from a lot of the division that we're now experiencing in our country. They also impact small cities too. And most recently looking at officers who were killed the week we were down there. Huge impacts to those departments. Terrible, terrible loss of life on every aspect. Looked at a leadership workshop, meeting with other mayors, very interesting, and again, a lot of the same problems. And getting back to the homeless issue, I attended a couple of different workshops on that. And so what you will find is I'm going to be calling for a mayor's committee to discuss homelessness, not just in Clear Lake, but all in Lake County. I spoke with the Mayor Pro Tem from Lakeport. She's very interested in meeting with us. And one of the things that we came away from this class was, or this presentation, that's what other cities are doing. They're looking at other disciplines within the county structure, looking at how the district attorney can be involved, how mental health can be involved, social services can be involved, because right now the tip of the sword in dealing with a lot of these issues is our law enforcement. And I may disagree with some of the comments I've heard in our media and seen on social media. They are highly trained. They know the problem, they're working, and they know the individuals. They need to be given kudos for that. But the frustration for them is they don't have the tools. They don't have the tools necessary to deal and help these folks. Same with our fire and EMS personnel. They also don't have the tools. So what other jurisdictions have found, and I think this is key in wanting to create this committee, is bringing value to some of the processes we have, not citing people and creating unattainable expectations that that's going to solve our homeless problem by issuing citations. But with the district attorney's help, we might be able to, rather than jail or financial fine, direct them to an appointment with a mental health counselor or a social worker, somebody who can get them off the street. Another thing that I found fascinating, the city of Bakersfield did, was they put people to work. They went to the shelters, they found people that were willing and able to work, and they put them to work cleaning up along the roadways and also separating recyclables. They noticed within the first few weeks at the homeless center, people not walking around with their head down, but their head up. People need to have a pride in what they do and to take ownership of the good things that they do. And the other thing that it helped them with, gave them a job. One of the success stories that I saw that touched my heart was a family of 4 that had been separated because of their homeless situation, where mom and the kids able to stay in a shelter and dad separated from them. They were able to get a house and be able to get back into a home through that project. So I'm invigorated by that. I think that we have some positive things on the horizon. I like what Senator McGuire is doing. And Mr. Metzger, Mr. Harris, I'm happy to sit down with you after the meeting tonight. We can go over some of that because we can fix the problem. We may not have the money in our city coffers, but I know the state is working on that, and I think we can use our local disciplines to try to help in this effort. So thank you for indulging me and letting me ramble for a bit, but there are good things coming, and I appreciate the work that everyone does here, and thank you for a great meeting.